Hey guys and gals, let's talk about the Jimmy Houston Legend spinnerbaits by Lucky Strike for a little bit. You know, I've been fishing spinnerbait since I was knee-high to a grasshopper, and it's still my very favorite bait. I catch fish on a lot of different baits, but I probably, in the course of a year's time, probably catch 60 to 70% of all the bass I catch on a spinnerbait. That's a lot of bass. Now, everything's good, but a spinnerbait is special. There's absolutely no doubt about it. The Legend spinnerbait that I designed for Lucky Strike really has a lot of great, unique qualities that other spinnerbaits simply don't have. One of the things that I did in designing this spinnerbait is that I put a little bit larger blade on than normally comes on that size bait. For instance, we have this bait in both 3/8 ounce and a 1/2 ounce. So on the 3/8, I would have a blade that most people would have normally on a 1/2 ounce. On a 1/2 ounce, I'd have a blade size that most companies would normally have on a 3/4 ounce bait or maybe even an ounce bait. So a little bit larger blade. A little bit larger blade gives you more flash, gives you more vibration, and quite honestly, the reason that I've got it on there is it just helps you catch bigger fish. A spinnerbait is one of those baits that you can catch huge numbers of fish on, and at the same time, at any given time, you might catch the bass of a lifetime, biggest bass you've ever caught. It's a big fish bait, but it's a quantity bait. It's a numbers bait also. And the larger blade just seems to give me a chance to catch a little bit larger fish day in and day out. You know, sometime throughout the day, there's going to be one or two or three big ones jump up and grab that bait with that larger blade. Larger baits, more flash, and more vibration. Let's talk about these blades for just a second. Willow leaf blades, of course, you want to put those on to create flash. They flash in the water. Bass can see them a long way off. They're an attractor to the bass. It's kind of like a strobe light. All of a sudden he's there and he sees this flash. And a lot of times they'll go a long way to move the bait. Round blades, on the other hand, are created for vibration. Round blades vibrate a lot. The Jimmy Houston round blades that we put on the Lucky Strike baits, these things really vibrate a lot, And a single blade will vibrate more than a tandem. I use a tandem the majority of the time just because a lot of times I'll have a gold out here on the end and either a nickel or a red. Now here's one of the things I do with these kicker blades a lot. I will use dip and dye, blade dye in a red, and simply dip these blades down in that red. That inside blade becomes a red blade. You know, the colors that a bass can see best in shallow water are red and blue. That's why we always put a lot of red. That's why we got red eyes in the Jimmy Houston Legend baits. That little bit of red up there will make a difference sometimes in a day of several fish. It's just because you have that red eye, just because you have a little red on the throat. And if you go ahead and dip that in some dip and dye blade dye and dip that blade red. The blades are one of those things that you can use in spinnerbait fishing to make adaptations or changes to that you need to do depending on what kind of day you have. As an example, let's say you're throwing a really small spinnerbait, but it turns into being a really windy day, but the bass are biting really low profile baits. Now, if they're doing that, what you want to do is you come in here and you might want to just trim your skirts off just a little bit, and you might want to move down to a smaller blade, but move up to a larger size head. So where you were throwing maybe a 1/4 ounce or a 3/8 ounce bait, and it got really windy on you, like the days we have in the springtime, got really windy, and it's real hard to throw that small 1/4 ounce or 3/8 ounce bait. You can go ahead and move up to a larger bait, trim the skirt a little bit, and move down to smaller blades. In other words, you keep a small profile, but it's a bait because it's heavy that casts a lot better in the wind. Conversely, if you're maybe catching fish and you're using a big bait, maybe you got a big old 1/2 ounce bait on there and you got a big blade up there on it, maybe you move to a larger size blade yet, and you're catching fish slow rolling, like the fish let's say when the buck bass are up getting around, messing around on the beds, and the females are out in about 7 to 12 foot of water, and you're slow rolling a big spinnerbait out in that deep water to try to catch those big females. So you're making a big profile bait, but you want a bait that falls slowly. You want a bait that you can drag really, really slow and still keep it going. It doesn't fall and hit the bottom. So that's when you might want to take and move down to a smaller ounce head and increase the size of the rest of the bait around it. Bigger blades, maybe double the skirt even. You got a big bulky skirt, put a big old long trailer on there. So you got a bait that's going to fall slowly because it's lighter, and yet it's still got the big profile. You can do these with the blades. If you want to get more flash, bigger blades. You want to get more vibration, round blades. Even with a willow leaf blade, to make this bait right here vibrate a little bit more, take your cutters, cut that inside blade off. So that's kind of the situation on blades. I throw probably a half-ounce spinnerbait day in and day out more than any other size. I throw all sizes depending on the situation, but I throw a half-ounce probably more than any other size. It's a size you can cast very accurately. You can throw it really well in a lot of wind, and it's just a dynamite bait. What about skirt colors? What's the situation on skirt colors? Well, right there, as you see, these are both used baits. There's two that I've been using, and you just look at them right there, chartreuse and white. This is the most popular and most dominant color spinnerbait of all the brands anywhere in America. It's certainly the same with our Jimmy Houston Legend spinnerbaits also. Chartreuse and white. You can't go wrong with chartreuse and white. The chartreuse, of course, is fluorescent yellow, and that bait will work day in and day out. But if you got dingy, murky water, you're probably going to catch a lot more fish using a white spinnerbait. Fishing in the springtime, early summer, when the crawfish starts coming out, I really like a fire tiger bait, which is fluorescent green, fluorescent yellow, and chartreuse, fluorescent yellow chartreuse. And so that bait, the fire tiger color skirt works really, really well. If I've got extremely muddy water, I'm talking about water that you can run that bait on top and you can see the blade, you can't see the bait, extremely muddy water, I'll move to a purple or a black spinnerbait color, and that seems to work really, really well. If you've been down in Florida, throw a purple spinnerbait. I mean, I'm not sure just exactly why, but that is dark water. It's not muddy, but it's tannic water. So if you're in tannic water, seems like a purple spinnerbait works better than any. My best rule of thumb for fishing a spinnerbait is fish this spinnerbait just where you can just barely see it just before it goes out of sight. In other words, if you can see this far down in the water, you want to have your spinnerbait here where you can just barely see it, and just before it goes out of sight. That sort of forms a junction area in the water. It might be this deep, it might be 6 or 7 feet deep, but that's a good rule of thumb for fishing a spinnerbait. Keep in mind though, however, that the closer you have your spinnerbait to the surface, the more vibration you're going to create. So if I'm running this bait and I've got it 2 foot down, it's not going to vibrate as much as if I put it up here within 6 or 8 inches of the surface. And to be totally honest with you, I catch a lot of fish with my bait right under the surface. It's right up at the top, and a lot of times I'm leaving a wake or just barely not leaving a wake. Having it up at the top, it's creating a lot of noise, a lot of vibration, the maximum amount of vibration, and really that works like an extremely good way to do it. A spinnerbait, one of the great things about them, you can fish them any way in the world you want. You can throw them out, wind them fast right on top. You can throw them out, let them go all the way to bottom, wind them in slow, bumping the bottom. You can fish them mid-range. If you think that the bass, you're fishing 10 foot of water and you think that most of the bass are 0 to 10 foot, fish it 5 foot deep all the way back the boat. The ones that's down below 5 feet will come up and get it. The ones that's 0 to bottom will go down and get it. Pretty good philosophy to use. But the main thing on a spinnerbait is keep it wet. You keep that spinnerbait wet, you're going to catch a lot of bass on a spinnerbait. With all the new lures, all the new technology that we have, I still catch more bass on a spinnerbait than any other bait in the course of a year's time. Got him that time. Got him that. He missed it the first time. He missed it the first time. I got him the second time. He's not 5 pounds. He's pretty nice though.
Decent fish.
He's pretty nice. Pretty nice. He'll play, by golly. Oh yeah, nice bass, nice bass. Now we're up here in 60-degree waters. First time it's hit 60, and we're not to the end of the pocket yet. And these fish are really cold feeling, you know, so they're moving out of considerably deeper water and coming up here. It's what a young man lives for, springtime. A young man's fancy turns to bass fishing warmer water, by golly. Some of them turn to other things too, but the real smart rednecks thinking about warmer water and bass. Slow rolling that thing off that bank. Ooh, that's a nice one too, looks like. He made a big old boil up there, I know that.
Oh yeah.
Oh, the big fish. That might be your biggest one of the day. Get my camera out there. Oh yeah, get your finger in his mouth before he gets away. Hold him right. Look at the belly on that booger. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo.
Oh, yeah. Nice fish.
Look at the belly on that fish. My goodness. All right. Say cheese. Look at the belly on that fish. Nice being able to recycle them big old bass like that, isn't it?
You betcha.
Oh, Oh, there's one.
Got him?
Boy, he's a strong one. I don't think he's giant, but because he's just moving too fast to be real big. Golly, he thinks he's a giant. He's pretty big. Boy, he's a pretty good fish. He's not near as big as that one you just caught, but he's a pretty good fish. He was moving too fast, I knew, to be like a 5 or 6 or 7 pounder. Oh, it's a nice one though.
Chunky.
Boy, look how fat he is. God, I can't believe. Yeah. Oh, he's hooked outside. He's hooked on top of he got that little Fire Tiger spinnerbait hooked on through his nose. He won't be able to smell a bait anymore. How come you can't smell? I've had a Jimmy Houston Legend spinnerbait in my nose.
Got pierced.